Let's talk right now to our next guest, Tobias Ellwood. He's a Conservative MP, he's former chair of the Defence Select Committee and a former Defence Minister as well. Good afternoon to you, Tobias.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for joining us again. The question we're putting out to our audience today, with the Israeli Prime Minister insisting that the ground invasion will go ahead, do you agree or disagree with Israeli military tactics in terms of the airstrikes and the ground invasion? And tell us why.
I'm glad you put the question in that way, because anybody criticizing the operational side of this is not to actually stand up and suggest that Israel does not have a right to defend itself, does not have a right, indeed, to invade Gaza in some way, given the horrors they've gone through. But it's important to understand the urban warfare, the most complex and dangerous kind of warfare that they will endure. Hamas has had years to prepare those tunnel systems, those booby traps and so forth. And you also touched on the beginning something so important. What is the long-term objective? What is we're trying to achieve in the longer term? Destroying Hamas, but that ideology could indeed grow again, as we saw with the Mujahideen, with the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. Keeping Israel safe, that's important too. But what hasn't been distinguished is what will be the governance structure, the emergency governance structure, the emergency humanitarian response, and indeed the emergency security apparatus that will follow once that invasion has taken place. And the reason, I believe, why President Biden visited the area, dropped everything immediately, followed by Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, then Macron as well, was actually it slowed the pace of events down to allow us time to think more carefully, more strategically about what comes next. This isn't just an Israeli challenge here.
Well, this is something, and it was interesting, wasn't it, what Joe Biden said as he was in Israel for those brief hours, to say, look, don't make the same mistakes we did after 9/11. Of course, those mistakes spread on for a long time. Now, I think it's perfectly reasonable for people to be angry. We talk about how this is actually a war of the Israelis say a war of self-defense for them to destroy Hamas as a terrorist organisation. I'm of the view that actually revenge is a perfectly appropriate and reasonable response to what happened in terms of that brutal massacre. I know it's an unpopular opinion with many around the world, but actually a government and country under siege, as they effectively are in the Middle East, basically making it very clear to other players like Iran, don't mess with us. We will respond, and it will hurt. I think that is what the British, many European countries, what the Americans have been doing for many years, indeed centuries, and it's how our foreign policy operates. This is the thing. When we talk about this debate, and there's a debate going on within the Labour Party, no doubt, on the Conservative benches as well, and in many different countries, within the EU, US and Congress as well, everyone debates this as if this is some sort of esoteric sort of debate, theoretical debate. There is no doubt at all in my mind, having covered as a reporter what happened on 9/11 in 2001, the visceral reaction that Americans had. I was in America very soon afterwards. The urge to have something must be done. This could never happen again. You can never take this risk again. How we felt after the 2005 7/7 attacks on the London Tube and Bus network and London Bridge, and ever since, it is very clear that if this event had happened, if 1,400 people had been slaughtered in the brutal way they had been in the UK by a foreign adversary, there would be no cause from anyone anywhere close to normal politics, as opposed to complete Corbynistas on the fringe. No one would be questioning whether or not you could be taking very serious military action that would possibly cause civilian deaths as a result of that. Why is it that the query is only when it's Israel doing it?
Well, I don't agree that it's just because of Israel, and I agree with everything you've said, but revenge isn't a strategy by itself. It's an understandable reaction, and you gave examples elsewhere where it's absolutely justified and recognized as well. But as President Biden said, indeed I said in the chamber here, you need to think about how you're going to utilize your vast military superior power and where it takes you. And that's the critical questions we need to ask ourselves. We're already seeing a revival of Islamic extremism, of terrorism across the world, as dormant cells re-energize and start to recruit again, probably funded by Iran. So there's a whole aspect to do with why did we allow Iran to develop so much proxy power and influence across the region over the last 10 years? If you want to solve this, there's that aspect of this which we've not bothered to engage in and lean into. And also, if I can just say, there's a bigger picture here which we need to get our head around. Our adversaries and our competitors will take advantage of this well away from the Middle East because our attention is back on the Middle East.
Yeah.
I can't be clearer than this. I've said this on your program before. We've entered an era of unstable and volatility that's testing the West's bandwidth to handle. We're actually entered another Cold War, but it's different to the last one. And we are at enormous risk of sliding to a world at war, but different to the last World War. It's some big questions for Britain itself. We need to review our own security, our own strength of our armed forces, increase that defense budget to 3% and upgrade our defense posture, because it's not just the Middle East that's going to get more difficult, it's other parts of the world as well.
Yeah, and that is a very big concern, isn't it? As you say, in terms of what you would envisage would be the outcome of, let's just say we've got an Israeli ground invasion, let's just say, and the question marks about this, their ability to destroy Hamas, to deal with the tunnels, to get people out, maybe hopefully rescue some of the hostages. I don't think many people are optimistic they will all be rescued. In that scenario, what would you think of would be one of the, a number of the options for how Gaza is ruled? Because everyone says we need to get back to the two-state solution. Every two-state solution that has been offered, a terrorist group like Hamas will try to prevent it from happening. Because let's face it, their raison d'etre is the destruction of Israel.
And that's actually the critical point, that last phrase you just said, the destruction of Israel. And the difference between today and prior to the Oslo Accords or prior to the Camp David Accords is more and more of the Arabic community and now recognizing Israel's right to exist. More so than that, they've been signing the Abrahamic Accords. That's a massive advance for peace and security and indeed prosperity in the region. What isn't clear is how the Palestinian people then can leverage and benefit from that. What will replace them? That needs to be the sell to the Palestinian people. They know Hamas is in charge now. They know that everybody wants to get rid of Hamas. I suspect most Palestinians as well. They don't know what's going to replace it. And this is where the Arab community needs to step in and say, yes, there's a transitional period, a technocratic approach to be able to run for a transition program until a new governance structure can then be put in place. Yeah. Until that is made very, very clear, an invasion will be seen. People will simply rally around more and more the Hamas cause. And indeed, when you've lost your family, you're more likely to sign up to the Hamas cause because of what's going on.
This is what we heard.
Ultimate objective.
This is what we heard about Al-Qaeda, this is what we heard about ISIS, and all we do is create a recruiting sergeant, but the recruiting sergeant is still working. And again, I think it's fascinating. We all say, don't we, sure that the majority of ordinary Palestinians don't support Hamas or other terrorist groups, except for the fact that we know the schools in Gaza have been, half the population is under 18 in Gaza. The schools are just non-stop propaganda saying, the aim in life is to kill Jews. We've had footage, haven't we, of these Hamas fighters calling his mum proudly, saying, "I've killed 10 Jews. You must be so proud of me." They are taught hate from a young age. Now, they're taught propaganda. How are they supposed to escape that? That's all they are seeing. When we say we're sure that the majority of Palestinians wouldn't support these terrorist groups, what basis are we making that claim? That is the concern.
Well, in the same way that we've seen in other parts of the world where there is constant war, there comes a point when you are sort of war weary, if you like. You've just had enough of it. You must have something else. So you then look at those people and say, is this all there is? And you're absolutely right. These are massively difficult questions. The point, though, is that we have to be able to sell something, to express something to the Palestinian people, to say what replaces Hamas, because it can't be an Israel occupation. That didn't work back in 2005. And as I say, the big difference between today, geopolitics in that region, is the fact that you've got Arab nations that need to lean in and do more. This is not just an Israeli challenge. It's one for the United States has to be involved, Britain as well, because of our legacy, our history, our connectivity, our soft power. But
let's just shorten that. It's all our fault, apparently. That's the thing. But we know that Arab powers, a lot of them have been making, normalising relations with Israel. We know that, Saudi Arabia was about to sign a new sort of diplomatic treaty with Israel. Again, the timing of the Hamas massacre thought to be related to that. And that's the concern. Lots going on behind the scenes. And yet we've still got this looming spectre of Iran that would love things to all basically explode out of control. At the same time, we've got the Americans. It does appear that both, in person and quietly behind the scenes are urging restraint on Israel. Partly, we know, because they're trying to get security, air security, defence, for their huge number of troops and assets around the Middle East to make sure they are secure. They've already seen, embassies in the region being attacked as well. There is a real concern that this could explode out of control. The fear in Ukraine was that this could explode out of control, that it spread through Europe. The fear of invasion by China of Taiwan. Do you feel that we are on the precipice, as many people are saying, of possibility of the outbreak of World War III, or is that just hysteria?
No, I've just made that point earlier. I think the world is very close to a world at war. That will be World War III, but it will not be World War II in that sense. There is a connectivity between and an alliance developing between our adversaries. China is supporting Russia. Russia is supporting Iran. Iran is supporting those proxy groups across the world. Now, you've got to unpick that one by one, break those umbilical cords. That's the way you're going to deal with the challenges in Israel and in Gaza, and indeed the West Bank as well, Yemen, in Bahrain and others. This is what Iran has been doing. There was an opportunity. I'm not a fan of Donald Trump, but he took out Soleimani, who was in charge of the Quds Force, the IGRC, the Iranian terrorist group. And when he did that, that was the moment to be able to breach Iran's influence across the Middle East. Until that is challenged, that has got to be part of the higher strategy in dealing with these challenges today. We cannot do that, help Israel and indeed Gaza, the West Bank, in isolation. And don't forget, because Iran has then supported Hezbollah, Hezbollah is of a different order to Hamas. If they get involved in the next few days because of an invasion, that's when the United States needs to be prepared and have an absolute plan to step in. Otherwise, this will spread and we will be in a world at war.
Yeah, we need to be paying close attention. Just finally, briefly, if you would, Tobias Ellwood, you mentioned Russia there. Today marks the 32nd birthday of Evan Gershkovich. He's a Wall Street Journal reporter. He's inside prison in Moscow. He's been detained by Russia on bogus espionage charges for 7 months since the end of March. Your reaction to that?
Yeah, this is what Putin does. He either kills his adversaries or he locks them up in this way. And again, we need to remind ourselves of what Putin's long-term plan is to, expand his Slavic influence, not only of his own people and control them, but indeed Eastern Europe as well. We've lost a sense of credibility, I think, after the fall of the Berlin Wall. We've become too complacent in standing up for what we believe in, what we're willing to defend, and what is important to us. We need to rekindle that element of international statecraft.
Yeah, and indeed, again, he's not an adversary. He's a journalist doing his job. But then that's what Vladimir Putin would consider to be an adversary. Tobias, I would so appreciate you joining us, former Defence Minister, Conservative MP. Thank you for that.